Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. You're in for a real treat. We're going to have a fantastic and lively and engaging conversation about art with two incredibly talented artists we have here with us tonight, who are both on display in the brand new art exhibition, Order Chaos, which is just opened today at the Meek Art Center here in West Vancouver. We'll get to meet everyone in just a moment. First, I'd just like to introduce myself. I'm Stephen Snyder, the gallery manager for the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, and we are so thrilled to be able to partner with the Meek to present exhibitions like Order Chaos in their fantastic space, which is in West Vancouver, which is on the unceded and traditional territories of the Squamish Nation, and we are incredibly grateful and privileged to be able to celebrate all kinds of arts and culture alongside our host nation neighbors. For any of you who have questions or comments for our incredible artists throughout this conversation, please drop those in the chat and we'll get to them throughout this conversation. So Order Chaos, it's open today at the Meek, and it runs until February 23rd and features our two fantastic artists, Leanne Kiely and Shevy Levy, who we'll get to meet in just a few moments. So the exhibition, as you'll see, lots of examples of it. It's abstract artwork and sort of deals with explorations in media and design and the human condition. It's a really vibrant and fascinating show. And so let's get right into it. First, we're going to meet our artists. So let's, Leanne, if you could introduce yourself and say a bit about you.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Leanne. I'm from Ireland, and I studied ceramic design in Limerick School of Art and Design. And I focused in my last year towards kiln cast glass. And throughout the time that I was studying ceramics and 3D modeling and all that kind of stuff, I never painted. I worked pretty much exclusively just with clay and glass. So this kind of transition for me has taken me a little bit by surprise. But I moved to Vancouver about 6 years ago after I finished college. And it took me a while to kind of get into my artistic rhythm here. But once I did, about 2 years ago, I started working in this style and I've been working away ever since. And what I find so interesting about this style is that I never get bored of it. It is quite repetitive, kind of tape, cut, paint, peel, and repeat. But I'm always finding new ways to express myself through line work and color and shape. It keeps me interested, working and pushing myself creatively, which is really important to me.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Leanne. Chevy, could you please tell us a bit about you?
Thank you, Stephen, and thanks, Leanne. I'm Shevy Levy. Perhaps just a bit of history, how I ended up in Canada altogether. I moved from Israel, moved to Canada in 1993. Lots of background in art, especially realistic, very classic. I didn't do any abstract until I actually moved to Canada and joined Emily Carr. I do have degrees in very different domain spaces in mathematics, actually, which they somehow say there is connection between. I'm not sure. The research shows there is something in the brain that works probably at the same spot in the brain. I'm still exploring, so we will see. But I do use a lot of math background into my, even not noticeable, but I do use mathematical structures and formula and a lot of the background into my abstract art. As I said, I basically discovered abstract well into the 2000-ish in Canada while working with a few local artists, also in US, and slowly but surely move to all together into abstract and enjoy every minute, introducing lots of mixed media, very much into oil paintings, and just keep having fun basically with whatever I do. And keep asking us questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chevy. Yeah, thanks both of you for sharing a little bit of insight. Interesting backgrounds. Fascinating to see how you've got to where you are now. Let's take the next step, and we're going to have a quick pre-recorded tour of the exhibit so that everyone watching can get a bit of a sense of what to expect when you come on in. So we're just going to pull that up right now. But you really have to come in and see the show in person. It's pretty spectacular. Folks. All right, everybody. My video has disappeared. So sorry for that. We'll move on and get to the next part of our conversation, and hopefully get back to see this video a little bit later. Okay. And yeah, just a reminder, if you do have questions or comments, please drop those in the chat, and we'll get to that. Okay, actually, we do have a question here from Sharon Habib, who asks, "What does each artist hope the work they are showing will achieve?" If y'all want to answer that, and I will find I'll find our video.
Leanne, you want to
Oh.
go? You want to go next?
Sure. Well, I think for me, a lot of my work is about like people engaging with it and taking their own kind of time to sit with it and see what they feel when they look at it. A lot of my work is about trying to convey emotion. So that's very personal to each person. So what I see in something isn't necessarily what you've seen it. So I think I'm really excited to hear kind of people's perspective on my work, and kind of what they feel, take inspiration from that. Yeah, back to the studio.
Yeah, interesting. So I know Sharon Habib very well, so I know where it's coming from. I know why Sharon is asking what she's asking. It's really interesting that actually I was not sure like when I process my art, I don't think, again, it's very emotional, I would say. I don't have a target. My work can go for a few years. I will start, never know where I finish. So achievement, I'm not sure I can talk about achievement during my work. Now, when we put together yesterday's show, this was a different question, because it was quite fascinating to me to watch the process of just kind of combining very different type of work and how it could actually fit together. And I say, wow, that's unbelievable. If I met you, Leanne, before, I would never imagine that we could actually show in the same room all the body of work, right? And it wasn't easy. It was a struggle for us. I remember that it was not easy to put together something that, oh, you know, it's a big space. How do we work together? What do we do about each piece? Color match, or is it about the shapes or whatever? It's very different the way I work versus your work, right? So I think this was kind of I wanted to achieve, if we talk about achievement, how do we make good experience for our audience? Basically, it's all about experience, right? I want the audience to ask the questions. I want them to give us some feedback on what they think about the work, and so on and so on. So I think for me, this is what I wanted to achieve, but in my own personal, it's always a struggle. I don't actually have an end point when I say I need to achieve something. I don't know about you, Leanne, but for me, this is the way I worked for all my life, basically, right?
Yeah. I think it's ongoing, you know, just everything kind of, it's cyclical. So everything
Exactly.
inspires everything else. So you just got to keep working at it. So this is all just part of the process. I'm very excited to show it you too, Chevy. I think the show looks really great together. Or all the work looks really great together. So yeah, I'm really excited for
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm not sure we answered Sharon's question, but I'm sure she understands.
Yeah. No, that's always the case, right? As when you're
Yeah.
making the work, you're not necessarily everyone has that end goal in mind, right? You're just
Yeah.
kind of like working to get through whatever you're working on.
Yeah.
But then getting it up, that's the tricky part. It's like, ooh, what I want people to experience. How do I want it to be seen? How I want people to see me, you know? It is always tricky. And like you're saying, Chevy, from just a curator's point of view, trying to put together an exhibition of more than one artist is tricky as well, because as you said, you know, you've got to figure out, well, what is the audience going to experience when they walk through and go through all of the journeys that the two of you are presenting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we found the video. So now we can see what everyone's talking
nice.
about.
Okay, well done.
Okay, so when you come in the Meek, fantastic, beautiful art center here in West Vancouver. It has two theaters on two floors. So when you come into sort of the main theater here, the Grosvenor Theater, this is the display that we have. We start off with some fantastic, really big, bold images from you, Chevy.
Okay.
And then we get to move on to three pieces from you, Leanne. Again, also bold, but in very different ways.
For sure.
And then the downstairs theater, it's a much more intimate theater. In the McEwen Theater, there's another fantastic space where we have to present everyone's artwork. Interesting trying to put a show up in a space that isn't an art gallery. Then just as you come right down the stairs, you get more fantastic work from Chevy. It's a very diverse body of work that you've chosen. There's a couple sort of different sort of series here, but they all work together really well. Yeah, and as I said at the top, this video does not do all of the pieces justice. You know, you really have to come in person and see all of the texture and all of the layers and the shapes and the mark making. And even in some pieces, like Leanne, there's even a really lovely sheen and almost sparkle to some of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great. These three images here from Leanne. And as we move to our final wall, we've got three more wonderful pieces from Chevy. So that is order chaos. Just a quick tease of it. But yeah, you can come on down and see it at the Meek. The space you can visit during the week, Monday through Friday, between 10 and 4, but also anytime in the evening or on weekends, whenever the Meek has a play or a movie or a concert, you can not sneak in, but they have the doors open about an hour before, so you can go on in and check out the beautiful artwork at that time as well. And I see we have another question here from Megan Hay, who says, I'd like to know what pieces are the artist's favorite and why, which maybe we'll get into, maybe I'll save that question for a minute. First, we'll get into the next section of the chat where each of our artists have chosen one of the pieces on display to talk a little bit more in depth about what they're showing. Let's start with you, Chevy. I'm going to pull up your beautiful painting here. Awesome. Could you please tell us about this fantastic piece?
Okay. Hi, Megan. Okay. Perhaps I will start answering the question from Megan about favorite piece. It's always such a tough question for me because it changed from one day to another, and I have pieces that I really liked, and then I hated them, and then I kept working, and then I kind of liked them, and it changed again. It's such every painting is a process for me. It's a never-ending point, and so it's a really tough one. I chose this one specifically because it's quite fresh. It's something that I've finished. I think it's a little bit even wet at one corner. I noticed yesterday when we hanged it. So it's super fresh paintings, and I think it represents a lot of what I think about art and the way I approach abstract art. So perhaps it will be a good example. I cannot say again that it's my favorite. It shows quite well in the space because remember the space has very brown wood, so it's not kind of ideal place to show work, but it's quite interesting. So again, I had to work also with the background, so it's part of the exhibition, right? Now about this specific piece, it probably took me about 3 years to develop this piece. The title is quite old, but I kept it as is because it reminds me of many great times in the working on this piece before. The background is probably the highlight of the piece. It's interesting why I say background, because there is so much red and orange, very bold colors. But the focus of the piece really is the marks at the background. And that's usually how I work. I spend much more time, working on the background and the marks, and keep developing, and until I get to the point where now I need something on the top, which usually takes me a lot faster to develop. It's interesting when I say it, but that's true. That's exactly the fact, that I work months and sometimes years on the bottom and the background layers, than working on the top. And this is, I think, really good example. It's not, this picture doesn't make it, there is no justice, because you cannot see the amount of layers. I would say probably hundreds on how much, because I know how much it took me to develop, and it's all oil. And oil, as you know, dries forever. So I need to wait also between layers. Otherwise, I get very messy combination of all these colors if I want to make more highlights, and with the reds or the oranges or the greens. And I definitely need always to wait until it's fully developed. And again, the marks on top is kind of more finale, but I really focus on lots of details. I always love when I see details in the work, and it doesn't, for me, it always looks more sophisticated than just putting. It's really easy to put abstract art and say, oh, we'll put some color here and colors there. At the end of the day, the picture needs to tell a story. And I really hope that's the experience that people will get, and exploring and really getting closer to the painting to understand what's going on underneath. What did you do? Why did you do what you did, right? And so on and so on. So I think that's, for me, a really good example of the way I work today on my work. Yeah.
Chevy, you mentioned, a piece like this, took you 3 years, and sometimes pieces take months. And you talk a lot about having to develop, each layer and each sort of portion of it. I wonder, how much does your initial intent stay intact when you're working so long on a piece like this, and it's sort of evolving? Do you sort of have an initial idea in mind that you just have to stick with, or are you allowed
I don't,
yourself to change?
as I said at the very beginning, I don't have plans. I started with throwing marks, basically, and throwing some colors that I like. By the way, I work with many pieces together. So when I work on a body of work, I try to work on the same palette of colors. And then that gives me much more consistency, and by also makes the body of work more connected to each other, right? So again, in this specific show, you will see different pieces from different eras, because again, I try to show some different approaches. But otherwise, it's really important for me to work on together. I don't have intention. I don't know where I go. It's a journey, basically, right? And people ask me, okay, how do you know where to stop? I don't know. For me, it's the time of when I say, okay, now what I see here is good. I like it, right? I might come back in a year from now and I say, what did I do? And then I will cover half of the painting with white, or who knows, right? So it's all about journey with no direction, right? Yeah.
Fascinating. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Stephen.
That was really interesting to hear about your process there, Chevy. I think kind of hearing you talk about having no plan is like the opposite of me. A lot of the time, I have to know exactly what I'm doing, and have it all thought out before I even start, which can, pose its own issues. But to answer Megan's question, again, a little bit like Chevy, I don't know if this is my favorite piece. I feel like this piece has a different direction than what I usually work with. It's more of a storytelling tool, and it is the colors that I think are more dramatic, which is something that I do really like about this piece. But um, this piece is called Fortitude Connection, and it is inspired by a story that I heard about a year ago. And usually I work kind of more based on instinct, kind of working with colors and shapes and in a specific style, to convey an emotion or a feeling. But this story, I'll give you a bit of background and then I'll talk about the kind of layers and what they represent. But the story is it's about a group of women in Iran in the 1970s. And I won't get too much into the politics of it, but basically, this was a group of women that stood up to the powers that be, that were trying to suppress their freedoms. The women were quite outspoken about their views and were really sadly, they were executed for not going along with the rules. But like while they're obviously this such a sad story, but their bravery really inspired so many people. It inspired me to make the piece, but also people to stand up and fight back. And I think that's something that's really relevant in today's climate. Um, but the kind of layers to get into it. So the background is kind of there, the black and grays to represent the dark and oppressive times that those women did find themselves in. The white circles are there as a base to represent the individual standing out from that darkness. And then I chose to layer that with light pastels, that to me kind of more represent the traditionally soft, womanly kind of colors. And then I overlaid those with metallic colors, as though they've been gilded or fortified in a way through their beliefs and through the community that they created. So for me, this piece is it really portrays how even in the darkest of times, community and togetherness can be a source of strength and resilience. And this kind of way of storytelling through my art and through the expressive shapes, is definitely something that I want to explore more. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Leanne. It's interesting, thank you again for sharing the story that inspired this, because I feel, many of us, when we look at, a piece that we might call abstract, for some folks, it's hard to find that way in. So I'm just curious as to, well, actually thankful because you really explained it, the color choices and the specific shapes in your design, to tell that story. And is that something, do you always have a kind of story? I know you say you work a lot from trying to convey emotion. How does that work, rather than how you tell a story? How do you convey just pure emotion through your work? What's the process there?
Well, I have a few. I did create I use symbols sometimes that again are very personal, and if I show them to you, you probably think something completely different. So sometimes I use symbols, colors. Other times I use line work, maybe more aggressive line work for those more aggressive, overpowering emotions, and then softer line work for the gentler ones. Um, I try to put myself in that headspace of the emotion I'm trying to represent, which can be hard sometimes, um, while I'm creating. But yeah, that's kind of what I try and do.
It's interesting, this idea of trying to convey emotion, which, I think we kind of think it happens spur of the moment. It's very spontaneous, but your work, as you mentioned, you like to plan things. That's
Yeah.
an interesting contrast, in how you work with that.
Yeah, sometimes I find myself kind of thinking back on, memories that either inspire good or bad feelings, and trying to relive them while I'm trying to paint. So, it can be difficult to do that. So those kind of pieces don't always happen. Sometimes it is more just an intentional plan, and I use color more so. But yeah, just depends on the piece, depends on me. Yeah.
Thank you both for sharing such interesting insights into your work. Yes, and hopefully, Megan, your question about a favorite piece, what the artist had to say, maybe they didn't choose their favorite because it sounds like it's near impossible. Megan also says to Leanne, what type of paint do you use? It seems very matte.
Megan Hay knows what paint I use. Thank you, Megan, for the question. I use flash paint. It's from France. You can get it at a place I used to work, Opus Art Supplies. But it's a beautiful paint. It flows so nicely. It levels. It is my favorite paint. It's kind of the only one I use at the moment. I'm a big fan.
And Chevy, you mostly work in oils, but do you ever incorporate other sort of media into your pieces?
Yeah, I do. I do. Some pieces already have collages in, so I would use paper, sometimes even raw canvases into the paint. I do use wax when I want to get some really, really heavy structure. I would add wax is working very well, usually works very well with oils. And then lots of oil pastels and for marks and pencils and yeah, anything that can work nicely with oil works for me. Yeah.
Oh, Sharon has another question. Leanne, what type of tape are you using?
Usually I go through a lot of tape, like a lot. So I go with usually the green painter's tape, but I do, once I've cut out the shape, I do put down a layer of matte medium over that. It kind of helps with leaking under the tape. Not, it doesn't eliminate it, but it definitely helps to minimize it.
Nice.
I love having questions from artists because they have different types of things they want to know.
The technical questions, yeah, they're always good. Keep them coming.
Color is very important to both of you. You both obviously love it. I'm curious as to why you choose the colors you are doing, whether it's just whatever's on hand, or if it's very specific to the type of piece. What is it about the certain colors that you use sort of that draws you to them?
You go ahead, Chevy.
You want to go first, Leanne?
Oh, no, you go first.
Okay. For me, it's a very tough question. I don't know, actually. I noticed when I look years back, I had seasons. I had seasons of blues, and I had seasons at very pale whites, white on white, and pink, very light pinks. And then I had maybe 2 years ago purples, a lot of purples, which I never touched before, and suddenly discovered that I actually like it. And yeah, so and this year was a lot of red. Since last year, red was, I started actually a new series that is very much related to all the whole events in Israel, all the disasters, what happened there. It's interesting that you talked about the women, because for me, I created a whole series about the women through what's the October 7 event. And it somehow felt that I need more more dark colors. I needed some blacks and grays and red. So I started there, and then I say, no, there is no hope here. It's too dark. And then I started to add the light oranges and play more with green, with maybe symbolize hope and future, that it's not closed and whatever. So again, I think colors all together, it's how we choose our dress or clothes all together. It's mood, like what the mood is today, right? And what do you want to convey, and for me, for myself, right? So I think probably that's how I chose colors, but it's evolving, Sometimes I'd start with blues, and you won't see the blue anymore when I end up, right? So yeah, so I think Tofino, by the way, the one that we had on the screen, started actually with a Tofino theme, which was a lot of blues and grays, and I slowly developed, so you can still see signs of the blue underneath, but slowly developed into the reds and oranges and some greens, right? Yeah. But it's hard to say. It's really, when it happens, basically. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I'm a little bit the opposite of that approach. I usually the paint tubs that I use, they're glass at the bottom so I can see the color. So I turn all my colors so the bottom is facing up, and I'll select the colors that I want to use, and then I'll kind of maybe use those to inspire the emotion that I want to represent, or maybe I'm going in with the emotion and then I pick them because of the color. But I usually have all colors picked before I even put pencil to a panel.
Okay.
Shapes are obviously very important to both of you. And there's an interesting dynamic between sort of organic shapes versus maybe more structured and geometry. I'm curious where that sort of comes from for both of you. Sometimes everything looks very sort of almost plant-like or floral in some of your pieces, Chevy and Leanne. Some things it's very almost mathematical, which is interesting coming from Chevy, saying your background and how math and layout and composition are very important to you. I'm just curious as to how your relationship to shape.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, shapes are super important, but I don't want them to control me or the canvas. So I start with a lot of shapes and formula and mathematical images, and then I start covering them. It's almost like a dialogue between a very structured environment to very loose and spontaneous. And yeah, and sometimes I will come back with a shape again on top of everything. I think one of the yellow piece probably has much more shapes than the others, and maybe a few others too. But again, it's all the time the dialogue between these shapes, which are not controlling the canvas, but they are there. They're underneath. There are lots of shapes and formulas and like all kinds. By the way, one of the pieces has also formula for the care theory, which is interesting because you, Stephen, chose the title for the show, right? So it was interesting because one of the pieces has like a real mathematical formula, which is not the shape, but it's, again, it has the quality of the mass that involves there. So yeah, again, I think, Leanne, you will speak, but you are exactly the opposite on me, right?
It's a bit of a theme.
Go ahead.
Oh, it seems. Well, as you may have people at home, well, we're all at home, but may have seen that all my pieces in this exhibition are on round panels. I do love working on round panels, and it kind of gives me the freedom to not have to decide until the end what way is up. And even then, I can tilt it one way or the other. Um, but so I really enjoy working on round panels. But for me, shape, it wasn't something that I really realized was so prevalent in my work until I sat down and started drawing that visual symbol library for myself about a year ago. And as I was doing it, and was like really trying to sit in emotions and like how does that make me feel, like what does that actually look like visually. I started noticing that like circles are usually in this group of emotions, and maybe triangles are here, and squares and rectangles are in a different kind of category. So again, I know it's very personal, but for me, I have different associations with different shapes. Um, so when I'm including them in the work, it's more about kind of again trying to convey that whatever I'm trying to convey in that piece. Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for sharing everything that you've shared tonight. Has been a fascinating getting to hear all these insights and how you're similar and how you're different and how the paintings that are in this exhibition have sort of come to life and come into existence while you're trying to sort out these thoughts and these emotions and these intentions and how you play with your media. It's been wonderful to listen to. And thank you to everyone who has been watching this live and who's asked questions and left comments. And thanks to everyone who's going to watch this again in the future. If you are watching this before January the 19th, please come on down to the Meek from 1 to 2:30. We're having a reception, and you'll be able to meet both Leanne and Chevy and see the exhibition and take it in and just have a good time with other art lovers. It'll be a fantastic afternoon, so please come on by and do that. And as we said, Order Chaos is on at the Meek until February the 23rd, so please go on and check it out. I'd like to, again, thank the Meek for their fantastic partnership in having the Arts Council curate exhibitions for that space. And thank you again to Leanne Kiely and Chevy Levy for being a part of the show and for sharing everything that you've shared this evening.
And thanks, Stephen, for hosting us, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you.
If you want to know more about Chevy and Leanne, the Meek and the West Vancouver Community Arts Council, in the description of this video, there are links to everyone's sites and socials. So please check it out and see what we're all up to. Thanks so much for joining us. Check out Order Chaos at the Meek on until February the 23rd. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.